This morning, we're just going to make this very simple. I'm going to talk about insulin resistance. I'm going to talk about some of the signs and symptoms that it could be you because your doctor's not talking about it. You're taking in this long list of symptoms and ailments, and you're getting shoved off in this direction and that direction and this pill and that pill, and then finally you're getting told that it's your fault, and if you just did better you would feel better, or better yet they just tell you just lose weight and all of this would go away. Well, so since they're not talking about it, because most of them are not educated on it and they don't know to talk about it, we're going to. And look, to understand that you're insulin resistant, it doesn't take a lot of tests. It doesn't take expensive trials and medications, because you're not deficient in a medication. You're just being fed in the wrong way at the wrong times. And so we're going to dive in to what insulin is, some of the other things that it does for you so you can understand why it's so impactful when you're resistant to it. And we're going to talk about signs and symptoms that it's you. At the very end, I'm going to talk about what I did to reverse my insulin resistance, reverse my diabetes, get my blood pressure under control, and get off of 13 medications. Because once I understood all of that, then my health really got better, and I don't have to take medications now. And my physician that I've been friends with for years texts me every once in a while and says, "Thank you for the work you do, because you're giving people information they really need." So, although I'm not a doctor, I've had the approval of many doctors for what I talk about, and the research and the science that I talk about comes from actual metabolic scientists and doctors in the field. So let's dive in. What is this thing called insulin resistance? Why does it matter to most of us, and what's going on with it? I want to go over how insulin resistance happens. But first, let's talk about what insulin is so you can understand why it may be important to you. And along the way, you guys, please ask questions. I'm really here doing this for you guys so you can understand what's happening and not suffer like I did and a number of my friends and family did. That's important to me because my health got so bad that I was afraid I was going to die in my mid 60s, and that nothing could be done about it. And I was terrified. And I spent lots of nights crying, worried about what legacy I was leaving my family, worried about the fact that I could no longer power lift or do the things I wanted to, even walk up and down stairs. So ask questions because I want to answer them as much as I can. And here's the thing: if I don't know the answer, what I will do is say, "I don't know." And then I'll go find an answer and come back and talk to you about what that might look like for you, and what science is saying about it. So, can we do that and understand that I'm just a woman trying to help other people? And by the way, the people that want to be all negative and say whatever, you know, my arms will still be open when you come back in a few years and say, "Gee, I wish I would have listened. You were onto something, and I'm not doing well." So I've had that happen too, and I'm always there for people. When you're ready, you're ready. Well, if you're not, you're not, and I can't help that. Let's talk about insulin resistance and ask questions, guys. So insulin. One thing that we need to know about insulin: it's a hormone. It's created in the pancreas. And when we overload, it's created by the beta cells in the pancreas. The pancreas doesn't just produce insulin, it produces a number of other hormones. We're going to focus on insulin. The primary role of insulin is to deliver blood glucose to the cells of the body. What is glucose? When we eat food, it breaks down into usable resources in our body. One of those usable resources is an energy form, and that's called glucose. We like to refer to it as sugar in the bloodstream, right? So that's what that is. When we have this rise of sugar in our bloodstream, insulin comes along and it grabs a hold of that sugar and it starts to deliver it to the receptor cells in the receptors in every cell of our body. Every cell of our body needs energy to function. There's not a cell that scientists have looked at that do not have insulin receptors on them. So being receptive to insulin is a good thing. Insulin is a good thing. It's just that when it's out of control, it becomes a bad thing. And so I think there's some confusion because I don't want people to feel like, "Oh my God, insulin is really this negative thing in my system." It's not. It's a really positive and great thing for our system if it's in alignment with what our body needs. But just like anything else, when it becomes too much, then the body starts to shut down to it. So now we can't get the energy delivery to our cells, and now we start to have problems. But there's actually three things that happen in this point. Some cells are very resistant to it. Some cells toe the line and they just do what they do. And some cells get overreactive to it. So insulin resistance really encompasses all of that. It's not just the cells shutting down, it's the cells overreacting. And we're going to talk about what some of those look like in just a little bit. But understand that the primary function of insulin is really that glucose regulation and that delivery of energy to the cells. It also promotes excess storage, the excess of that glucose as glycogen in the liver. So why do we end up with fatty liver disease, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease? Fructose is one of the big drivers, and I can get into that later if somebody wants to know why fructose is such a load on the liver, especially with insulin resistance. But any form of sugar in excess can be stored as glycogen in the liver and start to make the liver fatty. Insulin does that. When other cells aren't using up the energy and there's excess energy, it's going to start storing it. Now, it's not just storing it in fat cells in the liver, it's storing it in fat cells throughout the body. So now you're starting to gain weight. Well, so if the doctors are saying just lose weight, but you don't understand why the weight is coming on, then maybe we need to discuss insulin resistance and the fact that it is the primary driver of weight gain. If you can understand that, then you can understand that just calorie restriction and exercise more, eat less is not really a good model. It's understanding this hormone and that it needs to be under control. There's a lot of other hormones. We're not going to have time to talk about them today, but leptin, ghrelin, cortisol, thyroid hormones, estrogen, testosterone all play into your metabolism. And guess what? Insulin really regulates all of those hormones. So if they're dysregulated, it's very likely that it started with a dysregulation of this primary hormone called insulin. I'm going to run my blood pressure right now because I want to show you guys. So it's promoting energy storage, right? Insulin is an anabolic hormone. It wants things to grow. It doesn't want things to break down. It's not going to allow the breakdown of fat cells. So this is my blood pressure this morning. I don't know if you get 119 over 70, a little higher than normal. The systolic is a little higher than normal, but that's a really healthy blood pressure for a woman in her 60s with a history of diabetes and hypertension since my mid 20s. So I actually ended up in the hospital in my 30s with an extremely high blood pressure. And from that point on, no doctor could figure it out. And they cycled me through medication after medication after medication, and it wasn't being controlled. Starting the protocol that I started and eventually understanding insulin resistance is what got my blood pressure under control and got me off of all of those medications that were likely making it worse. So, insulin delivers energy, regulates the energy, and promotes storage of this form of glycogen. Now, glycogen, I skipped over that. What glycogen is it's glucose molecules bound together in little storage packets that the liver holds onto. And then when we need energy, that the liver starts to break down that glycogen and shoot it back out to the body as energy. Okay. I gotta go shut the door. My grandson, well, maybe if you guys can hear the TV in the background, let me know. My 8-year-old grandson is here and he just turned the TV on. I can hear it. Maybe you can, or maybe you can't. If you can, I'll go shut the door. If not, we're fine. All right. So insulin, we've covered a couple of things that insulin does. One of the interesting things that we always skip over, because I always talk about how protein is so invaluable in our healthcare, right? We're not getting in enough protein, and that's partly part of our issue, right? Most of us are eating way too many carbohydrates, not getting in near enough protein. The interesting thing is, insulin also regulates the metabolism of protein. So you can be getting in excess insulin, but or excess protein or enough protein, but if you're insulin resistant, your body has a hard time breaking down and utilizing that protein. So now we have muscle wasting and we have lean tissue wasting because those building blocks that we need so desperately just aren't getting utilized. That's crazy. Insulin is playing a part in that even. So I hope this is informative to anybody. Did anybody else know that insulin played a role in how your protein metabolizes and how important it is in keeping your lean, healthy mass in control? Is because we always just talk about glucose. If you are getting if you're getting value about this, then let me know. Put a one in the chat. You think you have this, John? Hang on. In just a few minutes, I'm going to go over why this is happening, and then we're going to go over some symptoms that you can look at to tell if it's you. And I promise I won't. I'll try not to get too distracted and take too long. Okay. I want to finish up with what insulin does because I think we need to have a good understanding of that. At least I do. So it has a role in fat metabolism. So what it really does though is instead of allowing you to break down fat and use it, it's encouraging you to store fat because remember it's anabolic. It wants things to grow. It's going to protect its work. It's delivering this energy to the cells and it's going to tell the cells, "Oh no, you don't get to destroy what I did." So it's going to inhibit the breakdown of fat cells. If you're insulin resistant, it's going to be really hard for you to lose weight. How many of you guys have had that problem? Like you go on a diet, you do all these things, you lose maybe 5 pounds, and then it stops. And you just can't seem to figure it out. And you're listening to these people telling you to eat every 2 hours, to just highly restrict not your carbohydrates, but your calories. Some of them that I listen to even tell you to throw out the cheese and throw out the fats and add in, grains and stuff, which are starchy carbohydrates, starches that turn into glucose. So, how many of you guys have had issues with that where you just can't lose weight no matter what you do? It's likely insulin resistance. Okay. Hey, Cesar, it's been a while since I've seen you. So protein synthesis, fat breakdown, it's playing a role in all of that. It also aids in electrolyte balance. If you're having muscle cramps, if you're having um, those things where you're just feeling that all of you're not able to retain electrolytes, or maybe you're not getting in enough electrolytes in the first place, insulin resistance is going to impact your electrolyte balance and start to affect your health in those ways as well. So now, like I do electrolytes every day because I'm 60 years old and I've had this problem for a while. I want to make sure that my body's getting what it needs. But in an insulin resistant state, you are not able to utilize those electrolytes as well as when you're in an insulin sensitive state. So it feels like a lot of us have been given all of this advice and we're um, piling on all of these excess things, not understanding that insulin is preventing us from utilizing them. So somebody said, "Why don't you drink more water?" Well, one of the things I do is I drink about a gallon of water a day. Whoops. So I also, though, put hydrogen back into my water. I do a lot with water. I drink a lot of water, and I always have. Even before I started the system, I drank about a gallon of water a day, and I still was ending up sick. Yes, the water helps, but it's not going to do everything for you. And we're going to talk about why in a minute. So I'm going to take a drink of the water. I have a hydrogen bottle that's a half-gallon size that's sitting out by um, my couch right now. I always have water bottles near me. So that's a good point. We need to drink more water. And many of us just are not getting in enough water. So that's a great point because if you're not getting in enough water, there's a lot of other things that can go wrong in your body. And getting in enough water is going to help the system and help you with all of this as well. But insulin still is really the key. So insulin resistance plays a role in your cognitive function as well. It contributes to enhancing memory and learning capabilities. When you're resistant to it, now you're having brain fog, you're having Alzheimer's, you're having a number of cognitive function decline and issues, even in children. I've seen children as young as 10 and 11 years old who start to address their insulin resistance. They're getting better scores and better grades at school. They're able to study better. They're having a better time with all of this cognitive function. And insulin is playing a huge role in that. So Again, it's anabolic. It wants to promote the building and storing of nutrients in the body. It's going to prevent the breakdown of that. So we're going to talk about what you can do in just a minute, John. Um, Now, cellular growth and differentiation. So even in your bones, like the osteoclast and the osteoblast. So one is building bone and the other stripping away the old cells. It affects the balance of those as well as a number of other growth and functions in the body. And so when we're insulin resistant, we're breaking down more bone than we're building, and we're having problems with brittle bones. So, what did I miss? Did I miss anything? Anyway, oh, and enzyme regulation. It plays a role in modifying the activity and various enzymes in the body. So, enzymes that break down your food and deliver them, that it's regulating those as well, and it can make those dysfunctional. So, that's insulin. It's not just blood sugar delivery, it does a whole lot. And when we're resistant to it, all of those things, enzymes and electrolytes and proteins and fat, all start to be put at risk, and how we metabolize them. So that's insulin. Now, how do we get to insulin resistance? So I'm going to have to give you some good news and some bad news and some whatever news. But this whole thing about eating every 2 hours, the people who are preaching that are being told that by uh, nutrition books written by the food industry. Because what does the food industry sell? Food. If you're not eating all the time, you're not getting them more money. We don't need to eat that often. Our bodies are built to feast and fast. Our bodies are built for that. We were always built for that. We knew that we were not always going to have food available. So our bodies are really efficient at taking that glucose and storing it as fat so that our body can break it down later when times are lean. The problem is, in today's world, most of us don't have those lean times. We just have this fed time all the time, all the time. And now you're being told eat every 2 hours. Well, every time you eat, your body's converting food into glucose, which is spiking your insulin, and then you're eating, and it takes 8 hours for insulin levels to come down after you've eaten. So now you're eating every 2 hours and you're spiking your insulin, and you're training your insulin that it needs to be higher and higher and higher because you're eating so often and so much. Even on a restricted calorie diet, eating that often continually spikes your insulin. So we're going to talk about how we do some intermittent fasting, and we're going to talk about how we make intermittent fasting easier. Spoiler alert, but we just don't need as much food. So we're being taught wrong. And then we look at the food pyramid that was like grains on the bottom, and then fruits, and then vegetables, and then at the very top or the little tiny point is fats and then proteins. Well, they've flipped that whole pyramid upside down now, understanding that that old pyramid that people like I and my mother were raised on is what's causing the problem. Okay. So eating all those grains and fruits are actually what's causing the problem. Really high in products that are in components that turn into glucose in the system, causing an overload of glucose, causing an excess need for insulin. And now, when we have this hyperinsulinemia, too much insulin, too often, it becomes chronic. Now it's insulin resistance. But the path doesn't stop there. Insulin resistance is not, oh, I'm not diabetic, this doesn't affect me. No, it does, because most people are insulin resistant for 20 years, 10 years, 10 or 20 years before they ever get diagnosed with diabetes. It was 40 years for me. We go back and look at the clues: PCOS, a head injury, some of the weight issues I was having, some of the other things that I was having. We can estimate about 40 years ago. Actually, it's a little longer than that now, but 40 years before I was ever diagnosed with diabetes, that I had been developing insulin resistance. We're going to talk about what some of those clues are in a little bit. But how do you know then? What do you do? If the doctors for 40 years saw my hypertension, saw me gaining weight, saw PCOS, saw my joints deteriorating and my hair falling out and my teeth and gums bleeding and all of that, and they didn't ever put it all together and say, hey, this could be insulin resistance. Well, we're going to talk about that in a minute. But when we get to insulin resistance, because we've been eating too much and we've been eating too much food that turns into glucose, and it becomes insulin resistance, when the body starts to shut down, and it can't get it to any other stores of the body, it's going to start putting it in your storage unit or your fat cells. Now, as those fat cells grow, they're pretty protective too. Your storage unit's like, I can only hold so much. And if you put too much more in me, then I'm going to explode. And I'm not going to survive that. So I'm not going to hold on to all this storage. So then your fat cells say, okay, well, if you're going to force feed me this energy, I'm just going to sneakily start spilling that back out into the bloodstream. So the sugar goes in at this point, the fat cells are full, and it just spills right back out. It's kind of shoving some more back out the back door, and the blood glucose level rises and stays high. So it's this whole trip, right? Now, when those blood glucose, eating more fruit is hard on your liver. We'll talk about that in a minute. I'll talk about that in a minute. Fructose in fruits are healthy in moderate amounts, but fruits were never meant to be the staple of our diet. We're just not built for that. Okay, the honest truth is, and if you don't agree with this, that's fine. You don't have to. Then you'll find someone that you do agree with. But we were built to live on proteins, and fruits and vegetables are an additive to our system that we can utilize. But there's a problem with the fruits that we're getting today, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But now, as your fat cells are spilling this glucose back into the bloodstream, now you have, hey, queen, you have this blood glucose that's rising, and then eventually you have an A1C that's rising. So your A1C, really what it is, guys, is a 3-month picture of the overall of what your blood glucose does. So the A1C is kind of a cumulative reading. You can have a blood glucose on any given day. It's going to be higher on one day, less on another day, depending on how much sleep you got and all of these other factors. So the A1C kind of takes that and says, overall, this is what's happening with this person's blood glucose. So when your doctor looks and says, hey, you're diabetic, what they're looking at is your A1C and an A1C of over, they used to say 5.7. I think they're about to reduce it down to 5.3. Some doctors may be looking at 5.6. But that's kind of the tipping point. 5.6, 5.7, it gets above that. Now you're diagnosed with prediabetes. And if after it gets like above 6.5, you're diabetic. Mine was 7.4 3 years ago and climbing. It seemed like within 6 months, 7 months, my A1C went from normal to just like climbing, 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 climbing. And it was scary. 7. So that's definitely diabetic, right? So, but how does that happen? It has to go through this whole process of insulin resistance to get there. What's going to reverse that is addressing the insulin resistance to get it down. Um, and then along the way, you're starting to have lipids that are out of whack. Now, it's interesting. I was listening to a doctor this morning talk, and he was talking about LDL versus HDL. And I'm going to give you guys a calculation about that in a little bit. But he said, why are we so focused on LDL when it's not necessarily the high LDL that's an indicator of diabetes and insulin resistance? It's a low HDL that is an indicator. Well, because they don't have a drug that increases HDL. This is from a doctor. He said what they do have is statins that reduce an LDL. So of course, there's this little bit of business in there. These drug companies have taught doctors to focus on the LDL because we have a drug for that. We can do that. We can give you a drug that's going to reduce that LDL. But it actually is making the problem worse. Doctors like Dr. Bickman talk about how statins make this problem worse. And so eventually you get more statin and more statin and more statin to try and control this LDL that really isn't the problem because it's the only answer they have right now. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Jim. Thank you for all those roses. So that's part of the reason why they're so focused on LDL when what we should be focused on is the HDL and the triglycerides. So those are some of the things. Now you have a high A1C, you have a high blood glucose, and you have high triglycerides, and they're looking at your LDL, and now you're like, oh my gosh, you're diabetic. We got to give you all these drugs. We're going to get all those numbers down, and we're going to fix that. Well, Why isn't anyone telling you that it's the food that you're eating that's causing all of those? You weren't born with a deficiency in any of those medications, but we've um, manufactured a deficiency in food sources that we need by modifying, by boxing, bagging, barcoding our food. We've changed our food to the point that our bodies don't recognize it and can't utilize it in the way that it's meant to. Hey, Jamie. So that's insulin resistance. Now, how do you know? Because you guys have been all asking, some of these symptoms are me. It sounds like me. This could be me. And so now we're going to talk about what symptoms they are. I'm going to give you a couple of calculations. Then we're going to talk about how you can prevent it, what you're going to do to start feeling better. So give me a few minutes and we're going to get there, because guys like Jamie and the Pitmaster and a number of other people have used this system. Jamie, do you want to tell me what's happened for you? And Jim, if you're still in here, do you want to tell them what's happened for you? Because it's not just me that's seeing amazing results. There's thousands of people worldwide who are seeing results, reversing their A1, their diabetes, reversing hypertension and kidney disease, and a number of things. Lower cortisol. So that's an interesting thing. Curtain call, can you ask me that question in a little bit? I want to get through this and answer everybody else's questions. You know, you just stressors, you're going to have to implement some things like making sure you're getting in enough sleep, putting down the blue lights, and maybe some meditation or gratitude to help with that. Okay. Will Pat find live? I don't understand that question. Okay. So, Jamie, do you want to come on, Jamie, or do you want to type in? Because I'd love to have you on. Let's see if I can invite Jamie, if he's available. There he is. Oh, he's not on live. Okay, so I can't invite him live. Or what? Let's see, guest. I can invite you as a guest. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to invite Jamie and let him tell his story. Then we're going to get back into the symptoms, because he's going to name a bunch of them right now, because he had a bunch of symptoms too. Hey, Jamie.
Hey, how you doing?
Looks lovely over there.
I know, sat in the garden, and it's actually the sun's not shining, but it's actually warm in the UK. Can you believe that?
Yeah. So by the way, Jamie's coming to us from the UK, where this whole system is available across the world. So Jamie, just tell him what happened with you.
Well, I was struggling for many years until I found you. Great. So I'm 50 now. So going back 2.5 years ago, well, from basically my late 30s to 40s, you know, I was getting bigger, I was getting heavier. I had a lifelong problem with IBS, psoriasis down my arms and legs. Eventually, the type 2 diabetes came. And the sad thing is, I just thought it was because I was getting older, right? My dad had it, you know, because obviously he's older than me. Everybody around me that I see, like I went to school with, you know, they've all got bigger. Most of them are diabetic. Most of them are struggling. And I just thought, well, it's because we're getting old. That's all a part of the parcel of getting old. But it wasn't until I realized that it wasn't anything to do with age at all. It's because I had gotten insulin resistant over the years. And did I know anything about insulin resistance? No. Did my doctors tell me anything about insulin resistance? No. They just said, take this medication, go on a diet, and off you go. And of course, neither of that advice worked whatsoever. And then, yes, skeptical as usual, seeing you on the lines and that. Is it going to work? Is it not going to work? I don't know. Okay, it's the price of the Starbucks today. I'll take the risk. It's got a 90-day money-back guarantee. And I started using it really to try and disprove it, you know, because I thought this is not going to work. So I created a 30-day diary. I logged my weight, my inches, my blood checks for the day, and it was basically all going the right way. Within the first week, I'd lost 2.5 inches off my stomach, and I'm like, I haven't really changed anything. All I'm doing is adding this to my day. 3 months later, I had no more IBS symptoms. I was off all my medication. My blood levels were completely normal, so I was off the medication for that. And took a a few months, but the arm came back to normal. No more psoriasis, because I didn't realize that psoriasis came from poor gut health. And yeah, and it's all down to insulin resistance.
It absolutely is. So you guys, I'm going to show you right now real quick. Jamie, I don't know if you have yours, but I need my tea because I haven't had it. So we're going to kind of spoiler alert. This is part of what I do every day. I have this amazing tea that helps me with all of the things that Jamie talked about and all of the symptoms we're going to talk about in a second. So I just look at it's a little tube like this. I just pour it in here. Get it all out. And I didn't drop the packet in today, so I'm so thankful for that because a lot of times I do. Look, and then I'm just going to shake it up. That's as easy as it is. That's it. That's all I have to do. Every morning I do this, and I do it again in the afternoon because this is going to give me energy. It's going to keep my hunger at bay. It's going to help me with blood glucose levels. And guess what? Although it gives me energy, it's helping my heart. This is a great part of how I got my heart health back and got off of dual therapy for my hypertension. And I showed them earlier today when I was on the live. I did a real time of my blood pressure, no medications, and it was 119/70. Pretty damn good blood pressure for a woman in her 60s who was told she had diabetes and that it was irreversible.
And also, I mean, I didn't realize until recently that all these injectables that the stars are using, the Ozempics, the Wegovy, I didn't realize that acted on a synthetic hormone called GLP-1. Who knew? But we produce that hormone naturally in our stomach. And again, I didn't realize that the tea you're drinking is up to 70-75% more effective than that Ozempic, the injectables. And it's completely natural.
And I talked about that yesterday, Jamie, that like the GLP-1 that people are injecting is a synthetic hormone. It's a synthetic peptide. We're going to call it the right name, peptide. And what they've done with that peptide is GLP-1 is actually meant to only survive a few minutes in your system. And so our body is supposed to be producing it when it needs it, and it's supposed to slow down when it doesn't. With those synthetic hormones, part of the reason you're injecting it is so that it goes straight into the system and bypasses the liver and the gut, which is never a really good thing. And they've modified that GLP-1 so that it doesn't break down. Well, let's think about that. Anytime. So if you put gas in your car and you go out and you turn your car on, put a stone on the gas pedal and just leave that engine revving all the time, the engine's going to start to break down. And that's what they're seeing with these medications is that people start to have pancreatic issues because it's overloading the pancreas, producing glucagon. It's also increasing some insulin production to help deal with this thing. Why is everybody saying when we have insulin resistance, the first thing we need to do is increase insulin? Like, it blows my mind that people think that the thing that's the problem is the thing that's going to solve them to add more of it. And it's just not true. So GLP-1s we talked about yesterday, there are sometimes in a very small dose. I've been listening to some doctors talk about how they use them for other things. In a very, very minuscule dose, they're great for people for a number of issues. The problem is we've taken this very, very small dose and we've said, okay, we're going to have a teaspoon of water. And what they're doing is giving you a gallon instead of a teaspoon. And now there's problems. But yeah, this increases your GLP-1 by 70% naturally in a manner that your body can actually utilize and respond to properly. The other thing with those GLP-1s, and I want to get back to the symptoms, is that I talk about this a lot because it's important for me and guys like Jamie and most of the people who follow me. As we age, at about the age of 50, we stop being able to produce more muscle, at least at the rate we were able to before. Those GLP-1 drugs are causing us to lose a majority of the weight, or I'm not going to say a majority, a good amount of the weight in lean tissue. So if you lose 10 pounds, about 40% of that is muscle and lean tissue. So now you've put your muscles at risk, your bones at risk, your ligaments at risk by adding those GLP-1 in and the synthetic one. And you've lost 4 pounds of lean mass to lose 6 pounds of fat. But hey, you lost 10 pounds. That's not really healthy. So then what Dr. Bickman says is Within about 2 years, people go off of those drugs because they're just sick of them and the dose is increasing and increasing, and they automatically start to gain that weight back. And I have a lovely woman from Florida who was talking. She had gastric bypass. She was on GLP-1s. She started gaining all her weight back and she was just like, I can't go through any more of that. She started the system and does the system today because all of those other things didn't keep her weight off. All of the weight starts to come back. But now, instead of gaining back 4 pounds of lean mass, you're simply gaining back 10 pounds of fat. And when you get insulin resistant again, now you're starting to lose more muscle as a result. But let's talk about symptoms. So Jamie named a couple of them, but I want to start with some of the top ones I want you guys to pay attention to. This picture right here by my head, central obesity or visceral fat. When you're insulin resistant, your brain, your hypothalamus starts telling you to store more fat in this area in and around your stomach. It's actually under the muscle wall, and that's why your stomach starts to protrude. When you start to address insulin resistance, your gut starts to go down. So people lose both fat and water weight. So I'm not sure, Ray, you're asking, do people lose fat or do they lose water weight? On the system, they're going to lose both because part of the water weight is inflammation, and that's a key sign of insulin resistance as well. But that big belly is one of the top signs. The other thing that I talked about is hypertension. I want people to understand that 95% of hypertension or high blood pressure, meaning anything of 130 over 80 or higher, is likely insulin resistance. So now you have a big belly and you have hypertension. I'm going to say you should probably start addressing your insulin resistance, but it goes further than that. A couple of the other signs and symptoms that I talk about the most are a couple with your skin tags, and acanthosis nigricans. So I had dark skin patches on my elbows, and let's just let Jamie go for now. Let's see. Let's see if we can get this done. Okay. So those dark skin patches are gone for me. My elbows were dark all the way down to here, and they were rough and scaly. That's insulin resistance. That's a problem with a number of things going on within your skin. But skin tags are your skin overproducing. Remember, I said some cells are going to be overactive. Keratinocytes. Keratin is a part of your skin structure. When you start producing too many keratinocytes, it starts to say, we're producing all this skin, but where does it go? So it starts to project as little projectiles out your neck, under your arms, in your groin, anywhere where you're rubbing and it's causing friction, it's going to start having these skin tags. And the skin tags will go away once you start to become insulin sensitive. So my skin tags all went away within about 3 months. I was like, Jamie, I thought a lot of this stuff was that I was just getting older. My mom had skin tags. My grandma had skin tags. I remember seeing her change her clothes as a small child at her house, and she had lots of skin tags. I just thought it was a grandma thing. I'm 60 years old, a grandma of 4 grandkids. I don't have a single skin tag on my body once I address my insulin resistance. So skin, but it goes down into things like Jamie said, psoriasis, even cystic acne can be linked into insulin resistance. So now what I want you guys to understand is when you combine all of these things and start understanding, I have this piece and I have this piece and I have this piece, I'm probably insulin resistant. Then we're going to give you a way, I showed you a little bit of it, that you can actually address it without medication by understanding really what the root cause is. 2 other of the top ones, yeah, his daughter had adult acne and it cleared up, and his daughter has had great results. His daughter, his wife are on it, just like my daughter-in-law, 3 of my grandchildren all use the system to help their health. Are they old? Do they have skin tags? Do they have all these other things? No. Do they have some of the other issues I'm going to talk about? Yeah. And so this helped. Now, you look at these other things up here, and we want to understand that if you start looking at this list and saying, I have more than 2 or 3 of those, it's probably insulin resistance. And again, it's not a medication you're deficient in. Although I'm going to encourage you to work with your physicians for any serious health issues, I want you to understand that you're probably not going to get the answers as to why this is happening from them. They don't have time and they haven't been educated on it. It's a nutritional disorder, and it's not a medication disorder. It's a nutritional disorder, and we're going to go over that. But so we've gone over skin tags and acanthosis nigricans and a big belly and hypertension. Those are some of the top signs. Brain fog is a sign. If you're cold or fatigued after you've eaten, that's a glucose dysregulation. That's probably because you have too much insulin in your system. So if your blood sugar goes really high and then it dips really low into hypoglycemia, and you're cold and shivery and just feel like you want to take a nap after you eat, it's insulin resistance and this dysregulation that's going on. Brain fog and headaches can be linked to insulin resistance. What are some of the other things? Oh, yeah, inflammation. And so your daughter had a 12-inch loss all over her body in the first month. Jamie, thanks for hopping on with me this morning. He's amazing. And he's helping people over in England or the UK. And we are all over the world. I'm going to drink my tea instead of my water right now. But all of these things are signs and symptoms. So when you ask, are you going to lose water weight or are you going to lose fat? Honestly, most people are going to lose some water weight on any weight loss system. You're going to lose some water weight first, right? You're going to start to get rid of some inflammation and some of that first. That's just true of any weight loss thing. This is not a weight loss system, though. It's a health system. And then you're going to start to lose fat. You're not going to have insulin under control right away. You will start to see some benefits like better energy, better mental clarity, better physical performance. And yes, guys, that means in that area too, we haven't even talked about ED or PCOS yet. And those are symptoms as well. Yes, I said PCOS and ED. Those are symptoms of insulin resistance. And if you want to know how and why, I will probably talk about those tomorrow and exactly why that's happening. So metabolic infertility is what it should be called, and it's directly linked to insulin resistance. The link is not working. Groot, let me see if I can send it to you. It may be that you need to check your cache, clear your cache. Sometimes that happens. The link is working. I checked it this morning again. I get that every once in a while on TikTok. But I will, after this live, I'll send you a message with the link directly and see if we can help you out. Okay. All right. So all of those are symptoms of insulin resistance. And I do a lot of talks on exactly why, if you guys are interested in why is this happening. She says all this is happening and why. I go over that in depth. But just know that if you look at this list and that seems like you, it's likely insulin resistance. I'm going to double down on this. It's our diet. It's not a lack of medication. We've been taught wrong. We've been fed wrong, and no one is talking about it. And that's why so many of us are sick. So we're going to talk about it. A couple of the things that have happened, besides the fact that glucose is so high in everything we eat, or sugars are so high in everything we eat, we're being told to eat too often. And then we look at the fact that fibers have been stripped from our foods, especially those packaged foods, those bagged, boxed, barcoded foods. We've stripped out enzymes, proteins, fibers to package them because they're not going to last long on a shelf if they have all of these nutritious things. Our food is not meant to last for 6 months or years like that, guys. It's just not. So the food companies are stripping that out so they can box food and give it to you. Now that means your body's not getting what it needs. And I said fiber. Fiber is one of the key things that we're not getting. Most of us are only getting in 10 to 16 grams of fiber according to multiple scientific studies. That's where we're sitting. According to multiple scientific studies, when we increase that fiber from about 16 grams to 37 grams, then we see great health improvements. We see reduction in diabetes. We see reduction in insulin resistance. We see heart health increase. We see gut health increase. We see gut microbiome increase. We see inflammation go down. We're just not getting that much fiber in our day-to-day. And that's a problem. That's one of the reasons I love the fiber that we use. It's not, and so What those studies were doing was looking at just generalized fiber. Now, every fiber has a different action in your body. So the fiber I use is specifically designed with 7 different soluble and insoluble fibers. In my mind, it makes it more potent because they're directly affecting the things I want them to address, and it's what helped me reverse my diabetes. It's in my link. So this is the fiber that I drink, and it's going to be the same thing. I'm going to take a bottle. This time I have far less water in it, and I'm going to just pour the in here, just like I did the tea. Now, I'm not eating. I'm not going to eat for a couple of more hours. I'll go feed my grandson, but I won't eat for a couple more hours. But I still like to get the extra fiber. You don't have to. Once a day is all most people need. I just like fiber, so I do this 2 to 3 times a day. I'm just going to shake it a couple of times like that and then drink it down. Now that delivers about 5 grams of fiber without breaking a fast, without spiking my insulin. Actually, when I take this, the fibers are called prebiotics, and they're feeding the probiotics or the good gut bacteria. So when they eat this, the result is something called short chain fatty acids. Those short chain fatty acids increase our ketones, which increase fat burning. So if you just go to my link and tap on that, a white box is going to come up. Tap on the white box and click on the link right below the red lights in my profile. It will take you right to the information for the products. Why do I not just name the products in the live, you guys? Because people will go to Amazon, eBay to get them, and then you're not getting guarantees. And half the time you're not even getting the real product because there's so many pirated products on Amazon, eBay, Walmart, and we have no one that's authorized to sell on those platforms for that reason. So if you want the real product that is backed with 3 guarantees, a 90-day money back guarantee, a low price guarantee, and a quality guarantee, you got to order through the company, which is through my link. Okay. So I do that to protect you guys. I can't tell you how many people have ordered off of Amazon, just not had the same results as when they've ordered from me, or paid about $100 a month more. So instead of $5 a day, they end up paying like $10 a day for the product. And I don't want that for you guys. I want you to get better, but I want you to do it in a way that's protective of you. They're not getting the 90-day money back guarantee either. So just use the link, and that's going to help you. Plus, when you use the link, you get texts from me, you get information from me, and you have the ability to reach out to me anytime and ask questions, and you don't get that on Amazon and eBay. You guys, I get it. I'm a big Amazon shopper too, but there are some things I just won't buy on Amazon for those reasons. If I do, I make sure I'm getting it directly from the company. So there's that. All right. Now, I have allergies this morning. Okay. Cortisol at all. Yes. Okay. Let's get back to cortisol a little bit, because cortisol plays into insulin very directly. An increase in cortisol levels. So if you're unable to control your cortisol because of stress, because of all of that stuff going on in your life that you mentioned earlier, it's going to cause an increase in insulin. Okay. So part of getting insulin under control is getting your cortisol under control. And getting insulin under control keeps getting cortisol under control. They're bidirectional. So if your insulin is increased, it's going to naturally increase your cortisol levels. If your cortisol level increases, it's going to naturally increase your insulin. Bidirectional. Okay. Good morning, Ro. So if you want to address your cortisol, I'm going to tell you, although this gives me energy, and Dr. Bickman talked a little bit about good stressors and bad stressors, this can raise my cortisol a little bit, but in a usable way that is actually healthy for me. But it's not raising my cortisol like overall. It's actually helping me with dopamine and serotonin, which are helping me feel more happy, relaxed, and well, even though I have energy. So when you look at things like Bang Energy and Red Bulls and sodas and stuff, they're giving you this high hit of caffeine without things that mediate that caffeine. And those are rising your cortisol in a level that's not healthy. I couldn't do any of those things for energy when I had hypertension because I was so afraid of what it would do about with my heart. Okay, so then breaking the fast the next day. Let's talk about that really quick too. But I want to finish with cortisol. Um, Cortisol, the best advice I can give you is I know if you have a stressful job, you have 3 kids, you have whatever, you have all these, you have got to, you have got to make sure you're getting enough sleep. I know that the times when my weight is up, I'm more hungry and whatnot, or the nights I get very little sleep, and then the next day it's all out of whack for me. You've got to get sleep. And so what I've done for that is I don't have a TV in my room, and I'm trying to learn to put my phone down. I've actually considered getting one of those clocks that points at the ceiling so I can see the time and leave my phone outside of the bedroom even. That blue light before you go to bed is going to stimulate cortisol and keep you awake longer. So stop watching TV and your phone at least an hour before you go to bed. Do some meditation. One of the first things I do every morning to help with cortisol levels is, and just life in general, is focus on gratitude. You guys, I spent the day yesterday talking to people, lovely people, and I love all of my customers. But it always is shocking to me how negative and how much everybody's looking for the negative and oh, things aren't better for me and oh, and but yet we talk and there's so many things that are better, but they're so focused on negative. That negative focus is going to raise your cortisol. Everybody needs to start focusing on positive. Find things in your day that you can be grateful for. Now, nothing to do. I don't get any commission. I don't do anything with that, but I want to give you guys a hint. In the morning, one meditation, it's the one that got me started on meditation that will really help, is called the 6 phase meditation. It's by Vishen Lakhiani from Mind Valley. So that's a great meditation. It takes you through a number of steps. It will help you start to feel more peaceful, which is going to reduce your cortisol level. Now, fasting. Let's look at a timeline. I do a 16/8 fast, although I'm going to give you guys at the end of this, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to be doing this month because I really want to double down on healing my heart and my liver, and we'll talk about that. For normal people, for everyday people who are just trying to get their insulin resistance and their diabetes under control, this is what it's going to look like. This is an imaginary timeline. You shift it around the clock based on your life. Okay. This is not set in stone. This is just a timeline. So, say you eat at 6 o'clock in the evening. Don't eat after that. You're done. Okay. You go to bed a few hours later. Now, what's happened is in those few hours, you're digesting that food. And hopefully, by the time you get to bed, your stomach is primarily done with digesting, which, by the way, can raise your cortisol a little bit. You want that down so you can rest. You want your body not to be working when you're trying to rest. So, about 6 o'clock, right? It takes about 2 hours for that blood sugar to really actually spike, for all that process. Your body's a machine, and for all of that to go through and your blood sugars to actually get to their high point. It takes about 4 hours for those blood sugar levels to start to come down. Then it takes 8 hours in a normal insulin sensitive person for insulin levels to come down. In an insulin resistant person, it could be 10, 12, 14 hours before those insulin levels come down. So we're going to say 8 hours for insulin to come down, right? Now, hopefully, if you've had your last meal at 6, 8 hours is about 2 in the morning when your insulin levels are coming down. Now, once those are down and the body senses there's no more glucose coming in, the insulin is down, we need energy. So then it's going to start to stimulate glucagon. Now, remember I said earlier on that insulin is anabolic. It wants things to hold on to things. It wants things to grow. Glucagon is going to raise your blood sugar by breaking down things. And remember, we need blood sugar. That's our energy. Interesting little caveat, when you're highly insulin resistant, you can be glucagon resistant too, meaning you have way too much glucagon and your blood sugar levels stay high even in a fasted state. The only way to fix that is continue with the system, continue with the protocol until it starts to get better. So at about hour 10 before glucagon, the one that's breaking things down, that's allowing HGH, human growth hormone, and ketones to start coming out. But at 10 hours, glucagon is just coming out. It takes about 2 hours for that glucagon level to rise and the body to get flooded with it and it to say, oh, hey, we're riding on glucagon now. So HGH come out, ketones come out. Now we're going to have a party and we're going to burn up fat and we're going to start to eat up some cells in the body that need to be gone. And we're going to break down glycogen stores in the liver and we're going to pass that out. And so you can see a blood sugar rise even when you're fasting because your body's doing its job getting you energy from the storage. It can't get that energy when insulin is high. It can only do it when glucagon is out. Okay. So now, when glucagon is out and HGH is out, that's 10, 12 hours in, right? Before HGH and ketones start kicking out. But again, it's not a light switch. It doesn't just happen. That HGH and ketones have to circulate through the body. And when they start doing their process, that's at about hour 14 that you can actually have some good fat breakdown, some liver clearing, some heart building going on. And now hopefully you're in a autophagy state where your body's really utilizing those old cells for energy. And trust me, all of us have some old cells that we need to use for energy. And so then we break our fast at about hour 60. Now, some people go 18 hours, some people do longer, some people do OMAD. I'm not really a fan of OMAD. I don't think you can get in enough nutrition with OMAD. So I do still like to have 2 meals in a day. Yesterday, my breakfast meal, and I'm leaning into Barbara O'Neill's, what she said is meats, eggs, cream cheese, butter. So, I mean, it's basically protein and fat. So yesterday I had some chicken that I had cooked in cream cheese and butter, put a little spices in it. Amazing. No sugar, no additives, no anything, just those simple ingredients. Amazing. It was satisfying. I got full. I did have some snacks yesterday because my grandson was around, like some little animal cracker things and whatnot. I don't tend to do those a lot. Then for dinner, I had a similar thing. I had a steak, a big sirloin steak, and just covered in steakhouse seasoning, herbs and spices. And that was dinner. But I still had my fiber during the day because that is not enough fiber, right? So I lean on this as a source of fiber because I just don't really get in enough of fruits and vegetables. So about 16 hours is the difference. No food for 16 hours, but that doesn't mean you can't have the tea. That doesn't mean you can't have the fiber. Both of these things support a fast and support your body in starting to tear down those cells that need to go and allow us to utilize them. By the way, those cells that are causing inflammation and a number of these things are also at risk for becoming cancer cells because they're just dead cells that are sitting there not going anywhere, and that's where cancer starts. So it's a topic that I don't talk about a lot because it gets really inflammatory, but understand autophagy is one of your best defenses against developing cancer. And this all has to happen by getting insulin levels down and clearing the gut of some food that's causing an insulin spike. I've heard many, many people talk about, oh, if you can only get into autophagy with a water fast. That's not true. There are many things that support autophagy without just drinking water. So the tea helps that, the fiber helps that, fats help that. You can do a number of those things. Dr. Mindy Pelz talks a lot about a number of things that you can have during a dirty fast and still be in autophagy. I try to do a cleaner fast with just the tea and the fiber, okay? But 16 hours minimum is what I aim for. Now, to be honest, I didn't have that sirloin steak last night until like 8:30. So we are at almost 10. So I'm 13 and a half hours fasted. I got a few hours to go. So I won't eat until noon. Not a big deal. I'm really not even hungry right now. And because I focus on protein and fats when I do eat, I stay fuller longer. Okay. So once you started to use the product, your neuropathy and swelling of your legs went away like magic. That's amazing. So Myrna, and that happened with me too. Like I have pictures of my feet. Of all things, I have pictures of my feet. But I have pictures of my feet. You guys, sometimes it's hard to remember how sick I was because I'm not that sick anymore. But I would wake up every morning and within an hour, my feet would be so swollen that the size 10 big ass boat shoes that I wear wouldn't fit. And I was having to buy size 11s and having to buy shoes that were elastic or slid on because I couldn't get my feet in shoes. I couldn't buy regular athletic socks. I was an athlete for years. I couldn't buy those. I was buying diabetic socks because they were the only things that didn't cut into me and cause this more swelling in the first 3 months, and probably in the first month, that swelling went down. Within the first 4 to 5 months, I took a long trip. I went to Puerto Vallarta. And so I was on planes, and that elevation change always kicks off more of the swelling and the neuropathy. Um, but I took a picture of my feet when I got home after being walking and on planes all day and night. And you could still see all the little veins in my feet. There was absolutely no swelling. And that was in the first 6 months on the system that my neuropathy and my swelling went away. I've done many talks on how insulin resistance is causing nerve damage. It causes dysfunction in the telomeres. It causes dysfunction in just the way that the nerves can communicate with each other. So you get these little shooting electric pains because those messages are not going from nerve end to nerve end. They're kind of shooting out the side, and that's what you're feeling. All of that starts to go away when you allow your body to repair. Again, you guys, so I want to be clear. This is a natural system that's reversing years of damage by helping you address the root cause of insulin resistance. You've got to give it time, and results are going to look different for different people depending on what your lifestyle is and how you're eating and how long you've had the damage. But it can get better, and it has for many, many people. Even a woman I was talking to yesterday says, I don't really see any difference. I'm like, really? You don't see any difference? So we started going over it. Well, yeah, her neuropathy is better. Yeah, she's lost weight. Yeah, she has more energy. Yeah, she has more mental clarity. But you just told me you didn't see any results. You guys stop focusing on the negative, start diving into what's positive in your life, and start seeing the results that can happen when you're consistent and patient and do the right things for your body, which is not what we've been being told. Okay, so neuropathy is, I mean, just the fact that I can walk without all of this like lightning bolt pain up through my legs is amazing. So when I say that I had a walker, a cane, and disability plates. Hi, buddy.
Hi.
Hi.
You didn't know
I heard you get up.
you know the guy that come out today?
What guy come out today?
Like the red shirt one
Oh.
guy.
On Fortnite? Is that what you're talking
Yeah.
about? Okay. I'll come play Fortnite with you in a little bit. Okay.
But
But I'm on live right now. I'm
I
talking
know.
to people. Okay.
I know.
I've only got a few more minutes and then I'll come talk to you.
And my controller dead.
Okay. I'll come fix all of that in a second and I'll fix you breakfast. Okay. I love you, buddy. So that was my grandson that I talk about all the time. He's an amazing, amazing joy in my life. And I'm so blessed that I get to spend time with him like I do. You okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So you guys, at any rate, the system, which is just this, a tea that I have twice a day and a pre-meal drink that I have before I eat. My biggest meal of the day is what really has reversed everything. Oh, thank you. He's such a loving soul, you guys. He's just, oh, my heart just feels like it's going to explode when I think about him because he's just such, I mean, he's a kid, but he's just perfect in my eyes. He's just amazing and loving and caring. He's 8, but he's been friends with this girl since they were since they were born, basically since he was born. She's an older woman, but she's coming to visit tomorrow. So today, what we're going to do, hey USA Physique, good morning. You guys are so amazing. We're going to take him down and get flowers and chocolate for his little girlfriend, and they're going to go meet her at the airport. But he's very thoughtful. He's put a lot of thought into how he wants to greet her. It's just amazing, amazing soul. Okay. So back to insulin resistance, you guys. In USA Physique, they train athletes in the bodybuilding and physique space, and they're amazing people. Follow them if you have any interest in that. When I was a power lifter, they came to the gym that I worked out at, and amazing people. I love them. Okay, so insulin resistance, you guys, is the root of almost all of our diseases today. And it's not just about calorie restriction. It's not just about exercise more, eat less. It's really about getting this hormone insulin that's regulating our metabolism under control. And that doesn't mean eating every 2 hours. And that doesn't mean eating a ton of carbohydrates and all of that. Yes, you can have them. But if you're extremely insulin resistant, you may have to cut those carbohydrates way back until your insulin and your glucagon levels start to get under control. Now, so we talked about a 16-8 fast, and I'm going to go hang out with this boy in just a minute. But what I'm going to do, and anybody who wants to join me or follow along, let's do that. But many of you guys know, some of you are new to me, many of you know that I've been having heart problems because I had high blood pressure since my mid-20s that really just got resolved 3 years ago. Over 30 years of medication, and nobody was able to address my high blood pressure. The system did. I showed you guys earlier, it was 119/70, no medications. It's been amazing. But what I'm going to do now, because I need to strengthen my heart, I need to get some other things under control from the years of damage that happened to my body. I'm going to be doing some extended fasting. I don't want to start it on July 4th. So July 5th, I'm going to do these things. I'm going to add our cleanse, which I don't talk about that often, but we do have a great herbal cleanse that helps pull parasites and stuff out of my system, gives me some extra fiber. I want to get back to doing my fiber 3 times a day. We have another form that helps me get that fiber in. And then I'm going to do some extended fasting. Now, extended fasting is not about calorie restriction. It's about allowing this autophagy to happen. When you have a body that's as riddled with disease and stuff as mine had been, I want to continue to clean that up. So I'll probably do like some 36 and 12-hour fasts. We'll see how I withstand that, if I have the brain power for that right now. But I'll do at least a couple of 36-hour fasts in the next month to help extend that autophagy and help my body build back. But again, it's not about calorie restriction. Fasting is not about calorie restriction. It's about allowing your body to switch between these two hormones. So what I did was I sat down and I was like, okay, if I ate 2 meals a day all week, and I got the recommended daily allowance in, what would I eat? And then when I do a 36-hour fast and a 12-hour feeding window instead of an 8-hour feeding window, what I'm really doing is focusing on nutrients, so proteins and fats and fiber, to make sure that I'm getting in a gram of protein per pound of ideal body weight. So that's why I do so much chicken and steak. And then I'm going to add in healthy fats like that cream cheese, avocado, and just not seed oils, not oils that are high in trans fats, not oils that have been drenched in hexane to produce them, but more natural fruit oils like avocado. Be careful with your olive oils. I've had to make sure that it's 100% pure olive oil. Many olive oils are cut with seed oils. So it'll be proteins and fats when I do eat. Now, after a 36-hour fast, I won't have steak for my first meal because that's harder to digest. Maybe I'll throw in a protein shake every once in a while just because I want to make sure I'm getting in enough protein in that 12-hour day. So it may be a large chicken breast, or even more. Sometimes I've devoured a whole half a chicken in a sitting and been fine, or that large steak in a sitting and been fine. I will add in the fibers and whatnot, and I may supplement with a high protein shake that has some good fats and other components in it. That's what I'm going to do for this next month to help my body start to heal, along with a few other things that I do, like exercise. Um, Along with this protocol, along with the 2 teas and the fiber in a day, you guys, let's be honest. You are not going to change your food and sit on your ass all day and not do anything and expect change. So I used to work out 3 hours a day, 6 days a week, and I haven't done that because I got to a point where I was in so much pain. And then I got to a point where I was so afraid of excess stress on my heart. So now my workouts look very different. Maybe I'm going to go for a walk. Maybe I'm going to do some light weight bearing exercise, but do it to failure. Maybe I'm going to just do some yoga moves at home, but move your body. And when you do it after you eat is when you want to do it, um, for insulin resistance purposes. Now, as an athlete, I trained fasted all the time, and there's a big uh, issue or misnomer about training fasted. I still was able to achieve world champion level, came home with 4 world gold medals. Every world championship I competed at, I brought home gold. Um, and I did it training fasted. It didn't mean that I was losing strength or losing muscle. No, actually, that fasted state, when my body was open to energy and my muscles were open to taking in insulin, it's part of what helped me from tipping over into diabetes during all those years. So if you're doing athletic training, like heavy athletic training, there's nothing wrong with doing it fasted. But for the normal person, when you eat, what you want to do is wait about a half an hour after you eat. That's when the energy is actually starting to be delivered to your system. And then go for a walk, dance for 10 minutes, do some yoga, do some weight bearing exercise, do something a half an hour after you eat. And that's going to help you get your body more insulin sensitive. So the system that I do, and this fasting and moving your body is what I call it. I don't care if you're wheelchair bound. I don't care if you're sitting on a couch. You can Google and find workouts that are going to start moving your body, and you must. If you want to be healthy, you must move your body. We're far too sedentary, and that's the other part of why we're so sick. So, to reverse it all and get off of 13 medications, all I did was the 2 teas that I have every day, one in the morning, one in the afternoon, and a fiber before I have my biggest meal. Now, because I'm a fiber nut, I actually have 2 to 3 of these a day. And then I have another fiber that has like 27 different herbal components and fiber in it that I'll take at another point a day. That's how I get my fiber in. Because I live alone. I'm not a huge vegetable eater and all of that, never have been. But I understand the importance of fiber. So in that instance, I do supplement with it. So there's that. You guys, tomorrow, and I probably will go live on July 4th, just and depends on, my son is coming home and we have to go pick him up. It depends on that timeline. Tomorrow, I think I will talk about PCOS and erectile dysfunction, because those 2 things, as I was listening to another doctor talk this morning, he was like, in his practice, he never had women come in that had PCOS that ever had a doctor talk to them about insulin resistance and the role it plays in their PCOS. So yeah, you can have some genetic predispositions to stuff, but there's always a trigger that sets it off. And the trigger that's setting off most of these genetic predispositions is insulin resistance. So if you turn that trigger off, that genetic component that's causing that can get turned off as well. For many people, it already has. Insulin resistance is the key. This system is the only thing that I found that reversed it. And you guys, I did the medical medium and berberine and black seed oil and all the stuff that everybody wants to come on and talk about. Did all of that, and it just was not helping. This system helped even in an imperfect life. And that's the other thing, is I don't expect anybody to be perfect. That's the goal of the system. It allows you to have a real life, strive to do a little better every day, and get your health back in a sustainable and realistic way for the majority of us. So That's that. Now we'll talk in the morning, and thanks for sharing your morning with me. If you have questions, message me. I'll answer them. And those of you who said the link wasn't working, I am going to try and come back to you and send you the link here in just a few minutes. Okay? So we'll see you in the morning. We'll talk about PCOS and erectile dysfunction and why they're so closely triggered by insulin resistance, and how insulin resistance, getting it under control, can help you with all of those and more. Thanks for your time, guys. We'll talk to you tomorrow.